Let me tell you about a story. Now when men are talk bound about their law enforcement, a right bunch of clowns, how they wear their badge like a plastic crown, how they're sticking to a story of which they are now bound. It's a rabbit hole they don't want you to go down, but over in Wisconsin, they're doubling down.
Hello everybody, this is Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases, but also as time passes I've been covering other cases such as the Staircase or OJ and many wrongful convictions of youth. I go over the documents, the photos, the videos, anything case related, so stay tuned because I have many more videos just like the one you're about to see. Hello, how you doing everybody? Okay, we're here today to talk a little bit about Paul Metz and Zander Road again. So, some of you may have read the more recent affidavit from Paul Metz, where he, I guess for his own reasons, wanted to kind of clear up the record a little bit as to the statements that were reported to have been given by him in queso by John Dietering. So he wanted to clear that up. So today we're going to go through, the first thing I'm going to have you go through is the basically the statements that are in queso, the ones reported by John Dietering, and we're going to go through those. There's basically two separate entries about it, and we're going to go through those and see what John Dietering was saying that Mr. Metz had been saying, and then we're going to eventually, after those two, we're going to see a recent affidavit where Mr. Metz is basically contradicting several, actually, a few of the things that were reported to have been said by him in queso. So it's interesting, and also was interested to find out that I knew he was like an electrician and stuff, and worked in the electrical industry or whatever, but I didn't previously pick up that he was a volunteer firefighter. So I thought that was interesting because he brings that up in his affidavit as a reason why he knows it wasn't a burning body that he smelled. Very interesting. So I will also bring up how it's funny that we now have Paul Metz coming out and giving an affidavit to kind of correct what was what the deputies reported him to having said, basically, right? So remember, this isn't the first time. We have other people that are, reluctant to talk to, the investigators in this case were desperate. One guy was desperate to avoid talking to John Dietering when he was going around recently for when they reopened the investigation into Teresa Halbach. Dietering was going around. He was trying to contact a certain person, and that person did not want to have anything to do with him. That person eventually had a friend of his call and said, please stop trying to contact him. He doesn't want to talk to you guys, and da-da-da-da-da. So there is this group of people out there that don't feel that the investigators in this case were being even-handed, it would seem. And the biggest proof of that is Josh Radant. Look at what Josh Radant does now. Whenever any investigator, even Zellner's investigators, he has his lawyer there. It's all before he agrees to talk to anybody, he lets everybody understand that he will not be signing on the agreement or whatever until him and his lawyer have gone through it line by line and made sure that it doesn't have anything in there that he didn't say. What does that tell you? Okay, what does that tell you about Josh Radant and how he feels about the investigators? Right, exactly. So now when I look at this, affidavit of Mr. Metz, and see him looking to correct the record, as it were, it kind of, I kind of am giving it kind of a little bit of credit here and listening to Mr. Metz a little bit because I know Josh Radant, I know, other people in this case that have felt not so warm and fuzzy about law enforcement and the investigators in this case. So, anyways, we'll go ahead and move into the original statements in queso by Mr. Metz according to John Dietering. and then we're going to go into his affidavit that he has filed recently with Zander. So here we go. A document about Mr. Metz, who I talked about in the first video. On 11/15/05, investigations received a note from Captain Rush indicating that he had received an overnight voicemail from Paul Metz. Okay, so keep that in mind right there, that Detective Dietering received a note from a Officer Rush or Sergeant Rush, whatever it was, and that's so that indicates that they are saying that Paul Metz contacted them, right? So just to point it out. So all right, here we go. Note indicates that on that night of 11/1/05, he heard a big whoosh and thought it was a power company problem. On 11/18/05, I, Dettering, did leave a voicemail for Mr. Metz's machine and advised him to contact me on my cell phone. On 11/18 at 15:43 hours, I did receive a phone call from the following subject regarding this matter. Paul J. Metz. Okay, so I just want to point out real quick that Dietering just consistently and continuously says whoosh, that it was a whoosh that was reported. So it's interesting, but just wanted to point it out. Metz indicated he has property of approximately 4 1/2 miles due north of Avery's auto salvage yard. He indicated that on 11/1/05 at approximately 17:30 hours. Okay, so according to Dietering, Mr. Metz claimed this fire and this foul-smelling, fire or whatever happened on November 1st. Okay, so that's what Dietering's saying in the reports. Just wanted to point it out. He had been feeding cattle on his property. He stated he heard a loud whoosh and indicated it reminded him of incidents where he had poured gasoline or other highly volatile substances onto a fire. Okay, so again, Dietering says Mr. Metz described a whoosh, and that he described it sounded like the sound when he had in the past thrown gasoline or other kind of volatile liquids onto a fire, and it raged up. So Dietering is saying that was what Paul Metz was saying in the queso reports in back in 2006, basically, right? So that's what Dietering says. So just pointing it out, just making a note of it. Metz stated that approximately 10 minutes later he smelled something that was similar to wires burning. However, he indicated the smell was not that, but he was unable to describe it, but stated it was very vile smell. He stated the cows had gotten very spooked and he could not get the cows back under control and they had damaged fences. Metz stated he had been in contact with WPS that evening, which is the power company, and there were no problems with the power outages. He stated the wind was blowing out of the south or southwest, which I disagree with and which the weather in the area disagrees with at the time. He indicated his property is located at the intersection of Yambo Creek and Zander Road. He advised me he's usually at the property should I choose to speak with him further. Investigation continues. Okay, so now we move into the actual interview of Mr. Metz, where they actually go and meet with him. So on Sunday 11/20/05 at 14:51 hours, I, Dettering, did meet with Paul Metz, previously mentioned in this report, and at his property just west of the intersection of Yambo Creek Road and Zander Road. I had spoken with Metz by telephone about the whoosh from the area of the Avery property. He states that as the crow flies, his property is approximately 4 1/2 miles from the Averys, and he heard a whoosh. I asked him how he is certain that he heard the whoosh on 11/1/05. He stated he was positive it was 11/1/05 as it was the day after Halloween. Metz indicated between 1700 and 1800 hours, all of his cattle were lined up along a fence line at the southern edge of his property near the road. He stated the air was really heavy that day and that there was a breeze out of the south. He stated he heard a whoosh off in the distance and after a few minutes smelled an odor similar to burning wires. He stated he is self-employed as a commercial electrician and is familiar with burning wires. He stated while the odor was similar to burning wires, it was something different than burning wires. He stated he began to detect the odor of very faintly approximately 5 minutes after the whoosh. He stated his cattle were bothered by the smell to the point of knocking down fences in order to try and get away. He stated He did not see any actual smoke due to the fact that it was dark or almost dark. To get his cattle back under control, he stated he got close to Zander Road, traveling east from his property, and the smell got stronger. Metz stated he subsequently had a relative contact with Kewanee nuclear plant, but learned they were not online at all that day. He stated WPS was also called within 1 hour of the odor being detected. However, they reported no outage in the area. He stated WPS was actually contacted by his uncle. Anyways, at 2:55 p.m., Paul Metz did provide me with the following written statement. Okay, so skipping a little bit here to the top of this page, I smelled something like wires burning. At this point, all of the cattle ran to the northeast of the property, going through the fences and knocking down the fences at the northeast edge of the property. I just want to point that out. I think it's important, especially when I get to talking about wind direction that day and stuff here. What the weather service says that contradicts with what he says, along with the statement about the cattle. Anyways, so, and along with wind speed too. So this statement is signed by Paul J. Metz. He cleared, Dettering cleared the Metz property to 1511 hours. He then, instead of heading east on Zander Road, which is where he said the smell was getting stronger. Metz said the smell was getting stronger when he was on his golf cart or whatever. He doesn't. He goes 0.2 miles east on Zander and then makes a right onto Yambo Creek Road and goes south to straight to the Avery property. The Avery property was 4.5 miles away from that property, and it's even further away from 3302 Zander Road. Okay, so there's basically all of the things that John Dettering claims that Paul Metz said, and some of the weird things that John Dettering himself did that make him look a little fishy. Like, how in the hell, when the guy tells him that he thought the smell got stronger when he went east, right? And yet, Dettering goes 0.2 miles east and then goes 4.5 miles south, right to Avery Salvage. Like that's really where this guy was hearing a supposed whoosh, which is not going to be what Paul Metz said. Paul Metz is going to tell us here right now when I'm done talking. One of the things he's going to tell us is that he would have never described it as a whoosh. He would have described it as a crackling. That's what he would describe it as. So, interesting. But anyway, he's going to tell us a few things here. And that's why I was coming in at certain points making a note of, so John Dettering says this. John Dettering says, so that it called attention to those things, because you're going to see those things get referenced here in Mr. Metz's affidavit to Kathleen Zellner that he filed recently. So, let's go ahead and see what Mr. Metz has to say now. Okay, so this is a recent affidavit from Paul Metz. Some of you may remember him from my Zander Road video. I'll leave the link to the Zander Road videos below. Anyway, Paul J. Metz has given a recent affidavit to Zellner, and he has some interesting things to say here. Those of you who know the first couple things that I just played for you, those were the original statements in queso. Obviously, the first one shows a Captain Rush reporting to Dettering that Paul Metz had called, indicating that he had smelled, something, and that sort of stuff, right? So that's and anyways, Dettering follows up, and it ends up that in the report Dettering fills out, he said all this stuff happens on 11/1, and he says that, he also says that Paul Metz reports a whoosh, right? So in this statement here, you're going to see that there's some slight differences to what we saw in the opening segments that I showed you. So, let's see. Paul J. Metz, under oath hereby states as follows: his date of birth, I am of legal majority and can truthfully and competently testify to the matters contained herein based on my personal knowledge. The factual statements herein are true and correct to the best of my knowledge, information, and belief. I am sound mind and have not ingested any alcohol and would not impair my memory as to the facts as stated in this affidavit. Prior to having my heart problems, I worked as a commercial electrician and was a volunteer firefighter. Around dusk on October 31st of 2005, October 31st, folks. So, I heard a loud buzzing sound that reminded me of electrical wires pulsating. I then smelled what I thought was insulation burning. I initially thought that the high-power tension wires that ran just south of my property were overloading, causing the buzzing sound and the bad odor. I did not confuse the smell with that of a burning body. I know what a burning body smells like from my time as a volunteer firefighter. I was interviewed by officers from the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. I did not initiate contact with MCSD, and I do not know how MCSD learned about this incident. But clearly in that report it says a Captain Rush handed this note to Diedring. So, yeah. Anyways, okay. So, I would not have described the sound I heard as a whoosh. Rather, it was a buzzing sound. I did not tell officers from MCSD that the sound reminded me of instances when I had poured gasoline or other highly volatile substances on a fire. So, he's basically saying that they were just making stuff up in their report. Because he's saying they were not accurately representing him. Gee, kind of like Josh Radant. Because now Josh Radant has a lawyer present anytime he talks to anybody regarding this case. He has his lawyer present so that they make sure they go over it line by line, so that the same thing doesn't happen that Paul Metz is saying happened here. Interesting, very interesting. Anyways. I did not tell anyone that I thought the smell was coming from the south or from the vicinity of the Avery property off of Highway 147. Nothing has been promised or given to me in exchange for this affidavit. So he's now saying that it's the officers that were inserting these things. I find it interesting, and I tell you what, I don't automatically dismiss it because, like I said, look at the example of Josh Radant. It's a perfect example of it. So that's the most recent affidavit from Mr. Metz. I thought it'd be interesting. So let's move on. Alrighty, so obviously I find this interesting. Obviously I still find the fire on Zander Road to be very interesting and, obviously still has my attention somewhat. But what I also find interesting here is the way that the accounts of Diedring are being refuted pretty big time by Mr. Metz. And like I say, I draw that parallel about Josh Radant, what Josh Radant has taken to doing when he whenever he talks to an investigator regarding this case, even if it's Zellner's. So I point to that because obviously he feels like the investigators and people investigating this case have misrepresented him or tried to and everything. So it's not just one incident where we possibly have a hint or, that's happening and that sort of stuff. So thought this was interesting. This new account of Paul Metz obviously pointed out, and, think what you like, I guess, but, whoever, somebody was trying to say that this whoosh and that this smoke was coming from 4.5 miles south at Avery Salvage. Who was it? Metz or Diedring? Does it matter? Why the hell is anybody trying to say that in the first place? I don't know. Anyways, it's ridiculous and in the extreme on its face, and I'm inclined to believe Mr. Metz's affidavit at this point, after seeing what Josh Radant, the extents that he's gone to. I think maybe Mr. Metz really was misrepresented in Queso by Diedring. I think it's very possible. So that's about it for today, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see ya.
My name's Stacy Seabrook, and I approve Eric Jose on Making a Murderer to be able to use my songs on his channel. Thank you. Oh, they say you can trust us. Oh, but they use the badge for an illusion. illusion of justice. Oh, they say you can trust us. Oh, but they use the flag for an illusion of justice. It's indefensible. Oh, now what they did, convict an innocent man twice with a 16-year-old kid. Yes, we can turn away, pretending all the pieces fit. Oh, but if we turn away, we let them get away with it. Oh, they say you can trust us. Oh, but they use the badge for an illusion of justice. Oh, they say you can trust us. Oh, but they use the flag for an illusion of justice. Of justice. We need a wrecking crew to tear this whole case down. Oh, did you hear the news? There's a new sheriff in town. Not the need touching one, not the one supported by them clowns. Oh, the superhero one. She's gonna tear that house of cards down. Oh, they say you can trust us. Oh, but they use the badge for an illusion of justice. Oh, they say you can trust us. Oh, they abuse the flag for an illusion of justice. Oh, of justice. We need a wrecking crew to tear this whole thing down.